Ta-Nehisi Coates is a National Book Award-winning author and journalist. His acclaimed work, Between the World and Me, is being re-released in paperback on its 10th anniversary next week. And his most recent book, The Message, is out now. Ta-Nehisi Coates, good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
We have not gotten a chance to talk on air in a bit. A lot has happened.
You think?
Well, we got a U.S. military parade on the birthday of the President of the United States, ostensibly for the armed services. We've got deployments of Marines on American streets.
Yeah.
One of the themes of your work is like, this has always been a perilous and contested thing, this thing we have.
Yeah.
But it does feel very perilous to me right now, and I'm curious how it feels to you.
Well, I try to hold two things in my mind. The fact that the moment in Trump does not spring out of nowhere.
Right.
That it does have, a historical connection. At the same time, this is a moment. It is a particular, it doesn't, you don't just roll your eyes and say, oh, well, it's always been this way. No, I think there's something, very, very different about this, certainly since the post-civil rights era. I think one of the really successes of the movement was that it made a certain kind of open bigotry and really, just a kind of malevolent, spirit, like shameful, at least within the borders of America, I should say.
Right.
And it's just not anymore. It just isn't. And I think one of Trump's great insights, was that previous Republicans, tried to channel a little bit of that, you know what I mean? And then, move over here. It was like Willie Horton was the ad, but that's not, the entirety of it. And he just realized, no, Willie Horton is the thing.
Right.
That's the actual thing. That's what you want to see. That's what you all are here for, really. You know what I mean?
There's no reason to do the dog whistle or the bait and the switch.
No, let's yell. Let's just yell. You know what I mean?
I mean, one of the things about what we've seen them do on the civil rights front to me is that I think there are sort of twin messages, which is a little intentional with what you just said, but hear me out. One is oh, you don't like the censorious left. You think these campus kids are being annoying, right? And the excesses of the left. And there's that appeal. Right. And then there's no, we're going to roll back the civil rights movement.
Right.
And he actually, gave an executive order in his first week, rolling back a civil rights movement executive order by Lyndon Baines Johnson. I feel like there is a little bit of people who maybe voted for the first and are getting the second.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's probably true, but there is no vote for the first and get the second. I know certainly, there are people who probably are relatively close to my politics who, especially around DEI, want to do a kind of gotta hand it to him. You know what I mean? Oh, he does have a point. But the point is not, merely let's get rid of DEI. You know what I mean? Anybody who says that there's a larger thing going on. If you make that a part of your politics, I just don't take it for granted that you're annoyed by some presentation that was made in a corporate a boardroom somewhere or some sort of anti-racism training that you had to go through that you feel like had nothing, to do with your job, because people deal with BS in their jobs all the time. Why does this particular brand of BS so offend you? You know what I mean?
It's oh, I saw an annoying PowerPoint at work. It's
Right. Yeah, that's work.
That's work.
That's work. And so if, you run an anti-racism movement through, corporate America, probably going to be some BS in there. You know what I mean? But why does this particular brand of BS, attract your ire more than all the rest? You know what I'm saying?
One of the essays in The Message is about having a book of yours, removed from a book list.
Yeah.
And we've seen this, really just heavy-handed, Jackie Robinson gets purged from the Pentagon's website about history, and books being taken out of West Point, about racial equality. Is that to you about what you expected going in, or has the heavy-handedness felt surprising?
That's a great question. And it's a great question because, I actually have to ask myself that. I think, it's one thing, to see the math and to say, okay, the math, this is not out of line of what the math would say would happen. And you go back and look at it, you can't say, oh my God. But at the same time, I don't know, and maybe this is a good thing, there's just a kind of base thing, I think, in us that says, no, they won't go this far. They won't. Because you hope, and also, you want to give your fellow human beings some amount of credit to say, Jackie Robinson, really? That far? You know what I mean? But turns out, yeah, they will.
I mean, I think on that point, that point you made in the first answer about one of the achievements of the civil rights movement was creating a version of kind of multiracial pluralism as a kind of default American consensus, like way that we operate in public discourse. Like
Right.
Jackie Robinson, hero.
Yeah.
Like that we all,
Yeah, nobody
that's just,
questioned that.
everyone gets that.
Everybody
White
gets
kids
that.
get that, black kids,
Right,
everyone
right,
gets that in school, right? And that there's an assault on that. And I also think there is some strength, though, in that thing.
Yeah.
That's bigger than them, that more people maybe are on board for that version of a pluralistic America than they count on?
I think so.
I hope so.
I hope so. I think so, and I hope so. And I am one who has kind of grappled with that vision. You know what I mean? And in places where maybe it's needed, and other places where I think it has some shortcomings, but it's certainly better than what we have now.
One of the themes of Between the World and Me is about the arc of racial progress and backlash.
Yeah.
And the ways that the sort of stories we tell ourselves about the American experience.
Right.
And one of the things I think you see now in the discourse, you're seeing it now with the protests in LA, and if there's an image of a burning Waymo, this is what is the predicate for
Right.
the troops. This idea that reactionary turns are always caused by liberal or movement or left overreach.
Right.
And what you think about that default setting.
You know what? I think part of it is, to go back to where we started this conversation, I think people have a misapprehension of what the civil rights movement was. And I think they believe that it was young people showing up in three-piece suits, always on their best behavior, never struggling with, their emotions, never doing things that weren't, particularly intelligent or strategic, and that's actually not the case. In fact, nonviolence takes an incredible amount of training and discipline. It is human to want to defend yourself. It is human, to act out, of rage. It is human when people come into your community and snatch them off the block. You know what I mean? To want to yell or maybe, pick up a rock and throw something at the people that are doing it. That is just, I think, true of any human community, period. Now, that's separate from the conversation of whether it's good strategically or not, right?
Right.
But I don't think, that was a struggle during the civil rights movement to get people to not throw rocks. Oh, it was a huge deal to get people to be disciplined, to get people. It was a constant thing that King was always dealing with. Sometimes it broke down. He's in Chicago or somewhere like that. And so I just think we have to remember that there's a natural element to this. You know what I mean? And not hold folks to a standard that really isn't a standard, but is a vision of how the story's been told to us.
Your last book, The Message, is a book about a lot of things. It's a book about writing in some ways and the ability of writing and why writing matters. And one of those essays is about the war in Gaza after October 7th. And one of the feelings I have fought in my own coverage of October 7th and its aftermath is a feeling of impotence that no amount changes the dynamic.
Yeah.
And part of what the book and the essay is about a faith that you can persuade people through writing, that communication matters and writing matters. And I wonder how much you think about that.
Well, just a small correction, because I didn't. The book actually was on reporting that was before October 7th, mostly in the
Yes,
West Bank.
yeah.
But
it came out after, though, I should say. Yes.
Yeah. But your question is not off. You know what I have felt? I have felt that you have these moments that you read about in history, whether it's during slavery, whether it's, I don't know, during Jim Crow, during any moment where you see some sort of violence directed, by a group of people towards another group that really can't do anything about it, and people either just kind of look away, or in certain cases they fund it and actually actively support it. And I have been watching this and I'm like, oh, this is how it happens. This is how, Trail of Tears happens and people just let it. How Native Americans for years are just kind of pushed off of their land and people just allow for it. How slavery happens. You just walk by somebody being auctioned off. There was a young lady, and I'm sorry, I'm on the spot and I can't conjure her name right now, and so I apologize to her and her family, but this young, 12-year-old girl in Gaza who used Instagram to try to bring hope to people's lives. That was a whole thing. She would tell people how to survive. And they killed her. And I saw that and I said, we all have our moments, you know what I mean? And like that was one for me. And so it's just like, oh, this is just gonna happen and people are just gonna look. And I go back to something I felt in 2024. And, you know, maybe this is just emotion, you know, speaking here, but, you know, being at the convention, I remain in the space of, I don't know how a political party can champion democracy, champion human rights, champion freedom, and support this.
Yeah.
It's not consistent, you know, and it corrupts, it impinges, it destroys, it mutilates everything about our message, and we are going to pay for it. I really, really believe that. I really, really believe it. So it's hard to watch, and even harder to endure.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, the book is The Message, Between the World and Me, also out in a special 10th anniversary paperback. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.